join the dots between the various aspects of child abuse in this country, which we've itemised in those 5 panels, and of course in the middle, we draw attention to the fact that there's an EU delegation visiting London at the moment. Largely as a result of the work in the EU Parliament of my colleague Sabine McNeill, who is somewhere present with us on Skype, if we could only reach her. And then what we do want to connect particularly is the fact that this country, she's arrived. This country's paedophile community, for want of a better word, I sometimes dub them Paedophilia UK. They're very much helped by all the things that go on at the beginning of the spectrum, the child snatching, the secret family courts, because then they have access to children that way. So undoubtedly, some of the problems related to satisfying the needs, I suppose you might call them needs, but I don't really sympathise with those needs, of the Paedophilia UK, the paedophile community. And we do know that the older end of the spectrum, children get abused in care. And we've had some tragic cases of whistleblowers having been abused all their childhood in the care home, speaking out and then having charges brought against them and put in prison, and this is going on and on and on. In one particular case in Nottinghamshire, a very brave witness called Melanie Shaw was abused in Beechwood Children's Home from the age of 7 or 8, and reported that all the children were systematically abused. All the children who ever came into that home were raped within about a week of arriving. And it wasn't just rape, it was sadistic abuse as well. They were tortured and they were hung out of windows and they were put in air fires, and it was a really, really bad case of, a care home gone completely wrong. And it wasn't the only one in Nottinghamshire. So there's something very, very bad. I would say Nottinghamshire is definitely a black spot for these horrible activities. So what I'm trying to do is get a sort of nationwide overview of where the real black spots are, because for sure it's variable. There's some councils and some local authority children's services that are not quite as bad as others. And I think this is one reason for trying to get a national movement going, so that we can get some sort of overview of where the black spots are.
Oh, Belinda, I'm sorry.
What?
When you run a helpline and you speak to families throughout this country, you've done it for 4 years, the black spots are everywhere, sorry.
Are some blacker than others? Are some areas worse than others? That's what I want to know.
Get recommendations. Some of these social services you're saying are black spots. My 6 children did stolen, and I know Enfield, they get recommendations for being really good. So how can that be when they've stolen children?
Well, the statistics, the facts would...
Statistics are deceptive. Don't listen to statistics that are being shown.
I'm sorry. Whoever wants to speak, can they please stand up and come and stand there rather than...
Right. Well, I think we're not going to actually have many more speakers now, because it's getting towards the end of the afternoon. We really must hear from Ian Josephs and from Sabine. It would have been much better balanced if we'd been able to get a connection with them earlier, so apologies for that, but these things happen.
One other thing to remember, Belinda, sorry to keep cutting in, is that there are no proper statistics of kids in foster care or who have been adopted. All as you will hear in the media and on the news is of children who have been abused by their parents. You never ever hear of the abuse of kids in foster care or adoption, right? They're covering it up, but we need statistics done. We need to follow the kids who are being fostered and adopted. We need reports, because them kids can't speak out. Blair, stop them.
And these independent review officers are not independent, and they're evil.
Yeah.
You. I know for a fact that independent review officers, they're not independent whatsoever. They're biased, and they cover for all the abusing that goes on in care.
They're paid by the local authority. If we could at least have other people's independent review officers supervising other councils. Do you see what I mean? Rather than internal staff.
Well, it's not exactly internal. This actual independent review officers from Essex is in a different area, still not independent enough.
Earlier this year, I was at Clacton. I had to ask someone time for the bus, and she turns out to be a social worker, or an ex-social worker, from Havering, where I come from. And she told me about the corruption. She said she used to get suspended for standing up for good parents and trying to push. She went to a house one day, and the mother was in bed with some bloke, and the 3-year-old was in another room performing oral sex on a man, and they'd done nothing about it. And I've got to go back and find this woman, because I had to sort of leave, but hopefully for more evidence. And she said she used to get suspended and how awful they were.
You don't have to dig very deep to find the dirt on this issue, unfortunately. Are we connected to Ian? Oh, right, Debbie.
I just wanted to say something about the scale of abuse of children who are in care. And there has been a study, and it's been published in the British press, and it said the headline was "Shocking Findings Spark Calls by Campaigners for Better Monitoring." Nothing has been done, but basically the report of sexual abuse, in some cases it was only discovered after historical abuse was reported by children that had grown up into adults, and then they'd gone back to their foster carers and found that they had been abusing the children in their care. And it's all in this report. That there's a few copies left on the table, so if you can get one and just photocopy it and give it to people, because we cover everything in that. The forced adoptions, the children that are being abused in care, and there's a lot of children. I'm not saying that all the foster carers are bad or all the adoptive parents are, but at the end of the day, the amount of children, even if it's only a few, there's loopholes that need needs sorting out. So, as I say, there have been studies done, and they are aware of exactly how many children are.
Debbie, is there a website you can get that report?
I think I'm going to have to just stop you now, because Ian has come in. I think. Are we on?
Will be in a second. We'll be on.
Can Ian hear us? Well, Sabine can hear us.
So I'm sorry to hear that it's both imposed these ads, but I suppose it's because I produced with my...
No, I've got it back again now. I can see people. I think they're going home.
No. They're going home tonight at 8:30.
Okay, Sabine, can you hear us?
Anyway, I can see Belinda now and here.
We are Sabine and Ian. We are.
Myself on the wall there.
Yes, we are showing you on the screen.
Together. Brilliant.
Yeah. So he's done that.
They're going home tonight at 8:30.
So please turn off the sound of the live webcast,
I can hear you, but
so we can hear only what you are speaking through Skype.
so he's done that. They can see you, they can see me, they can't hear a damn thing.
So we can hear only what you are speaking through Skype.
They can see you, they can see me, they can't hear a damn thing.
see it in
I'm there on the wall, I can see myself, but they can't get
You see, that's what the problem. The signal wasn't strong enough, and I had to get and I had to take off my computer the fact that I was watching what's happening in the theater, and therefore. Yeah, I just switched that up. I mean, I'm just hanging that big in.
I'm hanging it.
Thank you. And we didn't. I had seen that there was progress. Well, you thought you'd seen the progress yourself.
Ian, can you speak to us?
Oh, she's getting bigger. How does she know?
Ian, can you speak to us, please? We are watching you and we can hear you. Ian.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the wall there, but I get it there.
Ian, you should just talk.
Okay.
Just talk. It's being webcast.
Okay, you can hear me or we can't?
Just start talking what you want to tell the people.
All right. Hello there. You can't hear me, you can't see me, but I'm Ian Joseph and I'm being webcast, whatever that means. I'm going to talk about forced adoption. I think I'm in a good position to talk about it because I made up that phrase. What's the difference between forced adoption and adoption without parental consent? Well, adoption without parental consent can be people who've abandoned their children or who give up the struggle and don't try and get the children. Forced adoption means that their parents are battered in the courts, that they keep on trying to get their children, but they're still adopting. It's a shocking thing, and it's what I'm fighting about. Now, you can, if you get people like Martin Neri saying everything's all right and there should be more adoptions, ask yourself one question. Why is it that that Britain is the only country in the whole world, I repeat, the only country in the whole world where mothers are fleeing to have their babies in neighbouring countries like Ireland, France and Spain, because they're going to get their babies snatched at birth by rather nasty social workers. This does not happen in any other country. There are other places with forced adoption, certainly like the United States and Canada, but even there, they don't have people rushing to have their babies elsewhere. They don't take them at birth like they do in the UK. So, if the UK is the only country in the world, surely it must indicate that something's very wrong. And something certainly is very wrong. Now, I made it quite clear what the law is on adoptions now. He says, in several judgments which are accepted everywhere, that adoption is a last resort when nothing else will do. Yeah, I'll repeat it. Adoption is a last resort when nothing else will do. But in France, for example, they don't have forced adoption. So how do? They find something else that will do. In Ireland, they find something else that will do. In Spain, they find something else that will do. So why can't, in the UK, they find something else that will do? It's because they don't look. It's because the social workers have scorecards. They all have scorecards to mark how many adoptions they achieve. Now another thing that is completely untrue, they will tell you, yes, but out of all these thousands of children who are taken into care, 25,000 a year, there's 75,000, well, in the whole of Great Britain, there's more than 100,000 if you count Northern Ireland, Scotland in as well, and Wales. Out of all those, there's only 7% are adopted. That sounds not many, that's true. But of course, if you just take the prime targets for adoption, the children aged 1 to 5 inclusive, you'll find that nearly 1 in 3 are adopted, 31%. Those statistics come from the government, not from me. So again, it's completely misleading. And this aim, as it were, of misleading the public continues right up into the judges when it's sitting in their benches, because when a parent opposes an interim care order, at the end of it all, the judge will say, even without being asked, I refuse leave to appeal. The solicitor turns to his client and says, I'm sorry, look, the judge refuses leave to appeal. Nobody tells the poor client, unless he meets someone like me or Sabine or somebody like that, that of course they still have the right to an oral hearing to ask permission to appeal. And they can do that, and it costs them nothing, and they only have to ask for it. And they're bound to get it. They're not bound to succeed in their commission, but the game is not over. But the judges deliberately do not inform people. They just say, sorry, I refuse permission to appeal. So, what else is wrong? Well, the whole principles of British justice are standing on their head. One of the principles on which we're all proud, and we're all proud, is innocent until proved guilty. Now, that is fine, except in the family court, if the child receives an injury, it's replaced not by innocent until proved beyond reasonable doubt, it's replaced by the law of probability. Is it more probable than not that the parents did this? Well, if a social worker says they think the parents did this, if I was regularly for social services in the court says so, the judge will think it's more probable than not, even if there's not the slightest bit of evidence against the parent, and that there's just as much likelihood that the injury occurred at school. Nevertheless, innocent goes out of the window, and it's guilty if you're 51% more probable. And when you've got social workers against you, and sometimes paid experts, well then you're less than 51%. So that's one of the things that have gone badly wrong with British justice. The other is freedom of speech. That has been completely discarded in the family courts and replaced by gagging orders on parents who've had their children removed. There's a lot of debate about, shall we open up the courts to the public? Shall we let the public in? No, of course not. The children don't want, and the families don't want their affairs looked at by outsiders. That is not the point. That is not the point at all. The point is, why should parents who've had their children taken be gagged? If they go to the media or hold a public meeting giving their names and the children's names, they will end up in jail. Harriet Harman gave the last statistics, so that goes back to the Labour government, but she said at that time as Home Secretary in answer to a parliamentary question that 200 parents a year were jailed, approximately. And even she didn't have the exact figures, for breaking the omerta of silence. Why should parents who think they've been hard done by not only sit and suffer, but be gagged as well? But they're not the only ones to be gagged. The children are gagged. The children, especially those of, say, aged about 5 or 6 to about 12 or 13, as soon as they're taken into care for whatever reason, and they're completely blameless, no one's accusing them of anything, their laptops are confiscated, their mobile phones are confiscated, they are completely isolated from their friends and their family. And they wonder, what have we done to deserve this, especially if it's uniformed policemen who turn up at 7 in the morning to take them. And then, if the parents do come, the children are gagged. and the parents are gagged. The parents have to sign an agreement that they will not talk about the case. They will not cry. They will not show emotion. They won't encourage the children to think they might come home one day. The children mustn't talk about their case or try to. They mustn't complain of abuse in foster care, which happens on a regular basis. But the children, they mustn't mention it to their parents. Even when a little boy broke his jaw in a fracas on the beach, the grandmother, who I think I saw present in the audience, the headline was, don't say how your jaw got broken, because he was not allowed to tell her. He was lectured for 20 minutes during contact before he was allowed to speak to her. He must not report abuse or ill treatment in foster care, the child, man, boy or girl. So they are gagged. And these children, therefore, are treated worse than the worst murderers. Dr. Shipman, Mary Hindley, Peter Sutcliffe, serial killers who killed not once, not twice, a lot of them. In jail, they're allowed to telephone out to people. They're not gagged. They can telephone on the prison phone. And if they have a visitor, they can discuss their case. They can discuss anything they like. So these murderers, the worst people, serial killers, they are treated much better than children, blameless children, who are taken into care. This is so shocking, but people don't believe it unless it's proved to be true. But it's there in black and white. It's the law. It's what happens. I've got on my website, forcedadoption.com, examples of agreements that parents have to sign. Maggie Tuttle had one. It was called 24. I won't say anyway. Because probably somebody gets into trouble and gagged. But there was one that was 23 Commandments, it was called, because all the things that you mustn't tell your children, you mustn't let them tell you. So, not only innocent until proved guilty is gone by the board, but freedom of speech has gone by the board. And on top of that, freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. That means that sometimes a parent, a mother, for example, has accused a father of sexual abuse of his own son. May be right, may be wrong. But the mother, if disbelieved, is not allowed any contact whatsoever. For example, Vicky Hay, who I can't name because she was named in Parliament, she had the misfortune, after 2 years, she was banned from speaking to her child of 7 or 8. She did her shopping in the local garage quite often because they had a store there. And while she was there, the father of her child drove up to get petrol with her daughter. She couldn't resist going to say hello. And for saying hello, what did she get? 3 years jail sentence. Not 3 months, not 3 days, 3 years. That's far worse than most rapists and violent people who cross old ladies. That's 3 years because she dared to speak to her own daughter. There are plenty of similar cases. One man who had his son taken from him, but after he was 18, he came back to live with him, and he lives with his son now. And he put on the internet, nothing aggressive, nothing harmless, happy birthday for your 21st birthday, happy 21st, he put. That's all he put. And he got slung into jail straight away because there was an edict, an order from the court that he mustn't put anything about his son on Facebook. That was when he was taken at about 9 or 10 years old. So when he's 21 and actually living with his father, he still mustn't put anything, and he was jailed for it. Because that order goes on for the rest of your life unless you go to court and try and ban it, and that costs a lot of money and a lot of time. No, so you've got 3 things to the guard: innocence until proved guilty, freedom of speech, and freedom of movement. Well, I hate criticism, which I've been doing all the time, without suggesting a remedy. The remedies are pretty simple, I think. The first thing is that most of the people who phone me, and I get over 1,000 calls a year, certainly more than 3 or 4 a day, if you multiply it yourself, most of them say we've done nothing wrong, we've broken no laws. So the first rule should be that no child should be taken from law-abiding citizens. What is the point? We have laws, and we are told if you break those laws, then you get punished. Well, that's right. It wouldn't be very civilized without some laws. And you must get punished in varying degrees if you break them. But the local authorities go further, and the family courts go further. They say, even if you keep the law, we'll still punish you. We'll still take if we don't like the way you're bringing up your child, we'll still take your child, and we will take that child and give it to another family. And the mother goes to court and says, but this is my child. There are records, I think Sir Peter somebody, one of the judges, said to this poor woman, you are no longer the mother of this child. She said, yes, I am. He said, no, you're not. He said, I carried the child for 9 months. Doesn't matter. You are not the mother anymore. These strangers, he didn't say strangers, these new two people, but who were strangers, are the new mother and father. And you are nobody. You have no relation. Well, for a start, that's a black lie coming from the bench. I don't suppose he was that bad a man. He was just enunciating government policy. But the fact is, you can't tell someone you're not the mother. If she's the one that's given birth, she's always the mother, whether you pass a law or whether you don't, and however good or however bad she is. Freedom of movement, freedom of communication. This is gone by the book, as I said. But one of the answers is, without doubt, to simply pass a law saying that you don't take children from law-abiding citizens, because nearly all the children are taken from people who haven't broken the law. They're taken from mothers, perhaps, who've had a violent partner in the past. They found a new partner, had a baby, and they still take the child because they say there's a risk. And that's another thing. No child should be taken for a risk of something that might never happen. If one of you has been arrested for shoplifting and comes out of a short jail spell and then walks with your fiancée down Regent Street and looks at the jeweller's shop, you still can't be arrested by a policeman for thinking, because there might be a risk that you went inside and stole something. There might be a very slight risk, but the police can't arrest you just for looking in the shop window. Well, this is the children are taken for risk, and they should only be taken if something's done to them. It's the same thing, really. I said only if there's a crime. But the other thing, it's two measures that are needed. The second one is this, that children and parents should not be gagged. There's this freedom of speech and freedom of movement. You should be free to speak to who you like, when you like, no matter if you're a criminal or whoever you are, if you have not committed a crime of violence against that person. I mean, the courts will bully, or the social services will bully someone into signing a non-molestation order. And then, if they regret it and the two people get together, the man will be arrested, it's usually the man, for allegedly molesting the woman who welcomes her back in her home. And yet, if you look up the dictionary, to molest in the Oxford Dictionary means to intentionally annoy. Intentionally annoy. So how can you molest somebody who invites you in their house? But they say that's molestation because we say it is. That is ridiculous. If you send a Christmas card or a birthday card to someone who's going, then you'll get arrested and slung into jail. A man who waved at his children in the street when they went past, he was put in jail because he was banned from speaking to them. These are such draconian measures, they're only fit for a totalitarian state. And none of these things existed except in the last 50, 60 years. Why has it come about? Oh, it's very simple again. Adoption is big business, colossal business. And while there was a pool of children in the 60s, 50s, 60s and before then, there was a pool of children because it was a great sin and a great shame for a woman to have a child who wasn't, if they weren't married, if she wasn't married. Well, that gradually went by the board, so that probably more children are born out of wedlock than in it. And therefore, suddenly, these children weren't taken for adoption. They could just take from these teenagers and take them for adoption whether they liked it or not in those days. The pool is gone, so they had to find more. So suddenly, which didn't happen before, you get 25,000 children a year taken into care in Great Britain. And it's big business. The National Fostering and Adoption Agency, for example, was founded about 15 years ago by two social workers. And all this is on my site and it's public knowledge. and it was founded, and the job was to find foster carers and to find adoptive parents for local authorities, which they did on a commission basis. Last year they sold out to a firm called Graphite for £130 million, because they were making 10 million a year. Big business adoption, even for fosterers. There's a picture on my website, forcedadoption.com, of a bus in Suffolk. On the back of it is a big picture of a child with a kite, a young boy, and it says, "Be a foster carer for us and earn £5 per week per child." Yeah, 3 children and you're on £2,000 a week, and most of it is tax-free because it's called an allowance, not an income. What a grand thing it is. It's a big business. Now the judges will try and ridicule this theory, and they will say, do you really think, to some poor woman cowering in the corner, do you really think that we, the judges, the lawyers, the barristers, the solicitors, the social workers, the guardian, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, are all in a conspiracy to take your child? Do you really think that? Conspiracy theorists are ridiculous. And that's a good answer to it. No, there's no need for any conspiracy. They follow the example of our wonderful members of Parliament. When our members of Parliament decide to fiddle their expenses and cheat for public, they didn't get together, I will give them that, 650 of them, in one room and say, now let's work out how we can cheat. There was no conspiracy. Each acted on their own initiative. All they had was snouts in the trough, is the theory. Birds of a feather flock together, you know. So they did it individually, and that's what happens in the family court. The judges do all right, the barristers do all right, the solicitors do all right. They'd all be out of a job if it didn't happen. Social workers do all right. Everybody makes a good living out of it, and some people make an enormous profit. Sometimes the families make a big profit, and the agencies make the biggest profit of all, except for some of the special schools who charge £3,000 or £4,000 a week when the kids are put in them, because they're unruly and they don't like being fostered, they want to go home. They charge £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a week, far more than it costs to send Prince William and Prince Harry to Eton. And so it's a money-driven business, and that's why it's continuing, and that's why people will fight to make it continue. They'll say, oh, you can't say we're all bad. Well, they're not all bad. They've got families to keep, mortgages to pay, they want to keep their jobs, and they want to keep what they're doing. But it's a bad thing. I'm not saying they're all wicked people, because history has shown there is nothing more dangerous than a band of do-gooders. People who think they're acting from the best motives. People, for example, some 200 or 300 years ago, like Catholics and Protestants, who thought it was the best thing in the world to burn each other alive because they had a difference of opinion about religion. They weren't all bad people, they thought that was the best thing. They'd send these people to heaven instead of hell if they burnt them. You know, it was quite all right now in Saudi Arabia to cut people's hands off if they steal something, to stone women to death, These people are not bad, that is their custom. They think it is the right thing to do. I've no doubt about it. And I've no doubt that half these social workers have convinced themselves it's the right thing to do, because they say what we want is the interests of the child is paramount. It sounds good, but it's they who decide what the interests of the child are, irrespective of truth. On that basis, carried to extremities, you take a child from anybody sitting in your room there and give it to Bill Gates, because obviously someone as wealthy as that could provide much more for the child than any of us could. Well, it doesn't work that way, thank God. But if the theory was carried to extremity, that's what it would be. The interests of the child, you can't say they're better off with one family than another. It's only guessing in any case. But they think and it shouldn't be that. Even if it's a bad family, if they love their parents and their parents love them, that should be enough. Because the word love, is something that's banned by social workers. You never hear them talk of such a thing. Don't mention that word. They don't say that, but they don't mention it. What do they talk about? Bonding. Yes, these children can bond with their foster carers. They can bond with their new adoptive parents. Well, bonding is what footballers who play for Arsenal and Manchester United do with each other. They bond together. They don't generally love each other, do they? Pretty rare anyway. So, you know, this is where it's all gone wrong and why it will continue to go wrong unless there's a terrific fight to put it right. And the two laws we need, I will repeat because I don't criticise without suggesting a remedy, the two laws we need is a simple one to say no child should be taken unless a parent has committed a crime against that child or has been charged with one. If a parent is charged with a crime, that means the child can be taken, but if the parent's not guilty, give it back. At the moment, if the parent's not guilty, they still take the child and say, well, we think the court's wrong because it's 51% probable you did do this. So that's the one thing, one law we need, no taking of children from law-abiding parents. And the second one is quite simply no restriction on speech. If a parent has not harmed and terrorised a child and been convicted, then there should be no restriction on contact. There should be absolutely no restriction on what they say to each other when they make contact, no restriction on freedom of speech, and there should be no gagging. So gagging should be illegal of any sort, and so should taking children without a crime on those children. Those are the remedies. That's what we should campaign for, because it's no good shouting what a terrible world it is if you haven't got some sort of solution. Those are the two solutions I propose. They're simple, easy to understand, probably won't happen because they like complicating things. But I always try and reduce things to their simple facts. Because I tell parents, tell me the facts, not your opinion, it's not the judge's opinion, just what actually happened, and then we can decide what to do. Because the philosophy I worked out when I was 14 years old at school was this, and I still go by, I think, what do I really want? How do I get it? Right, that's what I'll do. And that's what parents should think when they lose their children. They get too distracted. This horrible social worker, I'll sue them, I'll kill them. You know, don't do that. Think, how can I get my child back? So that's the advice I give at the present until the laws are changed. You've got to think carefully what you want, which is generally your child back. How do I get it? How do I make that happen? And think about it. Ask me, ask someone else who knows a bit about the system, and then do it. Don't talk about it, do it. Well, I think I've said most of what needs to be said, probably more than that needs to be said. Have a look at my website, forcedadoption.com. I will talk to anybody who phones me. My mobile's always on. It's on the site. And if you get an answer phone, it just means probably either it's on charge, because it does run out sometimes, or I'm talking to someone else. I can't talk to more than one person at once, but I will talk to anybody. And I'll say this once again, any pregnant woman who wants to leave the country because the social workers have threatened to take her child at birth, and that happens far too often, I will refund their travel expenses to any country in Europe. But, of course, I don't give the money in advance because that could be a con. What I say is, you send me a letter proving you're pregnant, you send me a letter proving the social services, as they certainly write, threatening to take your child, and phone me from where you are when you arrive, and then send the receipt for the tickets, and I will send the money to your bank, and you'll get there the same day. It's all Europe. So that is just something which I do, and I'd like people to know about, because Britain is the only country in the world, I repeat, and this is what I'd like to end on. Britain is the only country in the world where mothers flee to have birth in their neighbouring countries to stop their babies being stolen at birth. The only country in the world. We talk of refugees pouring into England. We've got refugees, not so many of course, leaving England to save their children from the clutches of greedy social workers and greedy people working in the industry. And as many as can escape, I help to escape. Because every pregnant woman, no matter who she is, deserves a chance to keep her baby. With that, I'll say thank you if you've managed to listen.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Thank you, Ian. Ian, before you go, thank you. Ian,
Provided And this positive experience of others seems to be necessary for anybody to be believed. And it's just really tragic that you have had to listen to as many stories that you have had, but it is admirable that and how you've managed to keep going and to tell us what to do also. So thank you very, very, very much.
Okay. I'll say goodbye, good night now, and thank you for listening.
Bye
for now, Cindy. Goodbye, everybody.
Can I just say that one or two people wanted to ask Ian a question, and I'm very sorry, but there's a 3-minute lag between asking him something or saying something to him and him picking it up through this microphone. So the only way we could have kept Ian on was through Sabine, but I don't know if she can now hear us. Sabine, can you hear us? No, she's gone. I think that probably will bring us to the end of this session because it's now past 5 o'clock and we've got an hour and a half before we start again at 6:30. I hope you're all coming back again. There are going to be some very interesting speakers indeed in that session. And of course, more interaction, I hope. So,
Linda, can I say something?
yeah.
Sorry to butt in yet again, all of you.
Ian
Maggie Buckle.
Yeah, well, it's not Maggie Facts anymore, is it? Ian mentioned the word love, social workers and social services say about love for children. I've got the evidence, quite a few times actually, where children are in foster care and the parents have had to sign a contract for contact which says you are not allowed, that's the social worker's words, allowed to show any affection to your child, because you are an embarrassment to your child. No affection. Then on another contract, for contact, it said, we will allow you to give one hug on arrival or the hug on leaving. This is coming out more and more with families throughout the country. No affection to be shown to the kids in care. So what's that to you? Sorry to hold you up again.
Thank you, Maggie, for the last word. So, I think there are places to eat just round the corner, or, you know, if you want brought sandwiches, lunch here and chat. But see you at 6:30. Thank you.
Days like this with everything.
Experimented a week earlier, everything worked fine. Today, everything worked fine.
Me and Richie's had it. We've been at people's houses. Said, yeah, what's that network? We've been there 2 days. You know, where it conspires against you.
Yeah.